The NASA budget process is confusing, and the way the media reports on it doesn't make things better. This short video is my attempt to reduce the confusion. This isn't going to be terribly exciting, therefore we're going to start with an Atlas Centaur test from 1962.
After nearly a year's delay posed by its liquid hydrogen fuel, the mighty Centaur is on its pad at Cape Canaveral for a maiden flight. It is to be boosted into space by an Atlas for a 15-minute flight, a flight scheduled to study the performance of the temperamental hydrogen fuel. The Centaur is designed to put a payload of more than a ton on the moon or 1,000 pounds in the vicinity of Mars or Venus. The first few seconds of the shoot go without incident. The Centaur climbs to 30,000 feet, then malfunction.
And now on to the budget stuff. We'll start with the NASA Fiscal Year 2023 Budget Estimates, a 990-page document that both summarizes all the programs NASA is working on and provides estimates for how much they will cost in 2023. It would be more correct to replace the word estimates with one of the following: dreams, hopes, or wishes. I'll explain why in a minute. Here's how that budget document is created. NASA is part of the executive branch and therefore is managed by the President. In between the President and NASA is the NASA Administrator, currently former astronaut and Florida Senator Bill Nelson. You can think of his job as NASA CEO. He's in charge of the overall operation of the agency. The third player in this process is the Office of Management and Budget. There are discussions between all of these entities. The President has specific ideas of what they want from space, and NASA has ideas on what they want to do, and OMB understands the fiscal realities. And all of those concerns get iterated and refined, and out of that process comes the NASA budget, plus the budgets for the rest of the government. However, the Constitution says that it isn't the President that decides what money to spend, it's Congress. That is why the NASA budget is aspirational. It is describing what NASA is hoping to get. The Senate and the House control how much money NASA actually gets. To start, both the Senate and the House create a budget resolution, which is a high-level overview that describes how much money will be spent across the government. These then feed into a joint working group, and the House and Senate agree on a concurrent budget resolution. But that resolution has very little detail. It will only say that science, space, and technology together get $43 billion. Those high-level numbers then get sent back to the Senate and House, to the committees that own deciding the specifics on how that money will be allocated. Their decisions then feed back into another shared process to reconcile their different numbers, and that ultimately leads to the NASA appropriations, a detailed budget for how much money NASA has for a fiscal year. The Planetary Society nicely provides a summary of the appropriations. Here you can see part of the appropriations for 2022. The table shows the following values. The first column shows the amount of money that was appropriated in 2021, where appropriated means given to NASA to spend. The next column shows the President's budget request for 2022. The next two columns show the House and Senate appropriations, which is how much each of the committees thought NASA should spend on individual programs. And the final column shows the amount of money actually appropriated. Let's look at three programs. The James Webb Space Telescope is flat across the board. NASA wanted $175.4 million, and everybody agreed on that figure. SLS got more than they requested. And if you look at the Earth science amount, both the Senate and House thought the request was reasonable, but when they got together, they knocked a few $100 million off of it. That is, as they say, how politics works. Congressional authorization is a separate process, and it is the way that Congress establishes, continues, or modifies federal programs. NASA cannot start new projects without this authorization. For example, the NASA Authorization Act of 2017 said NASA should make progress on the technologies and capabilities needed to position it to meet objectives of the Wide Field Infrared Survey Telescope, as outlined in the 2010 National Academy's Astronomy and Astrophysics Decadal Survey, in a way that maximizes the scientific productivity of meeting those objectives for the resources invested. That gave permission for NASA to begin developing what is now known as the Nancy Grace Roman Space Telescope. Nancy Grace Roman was the first female executive at NASA and served as NASA's first chief of astronomy throughout the 1960s and 1970s, establishing her as one of the visionary founders of the U.S. civilian space program. She created NASA's space astronomy program and is known as the Mother of Hubble for her foundational role in planning the Hubble Space Telescope. NASA cannot start new programs without authorization, but authorization does not provide any money. What matters is the money that gets appropriated. Or, as immortalized in The Right Stuff,
Well, you boys know what makes this bird go up? Funding makes this bird go up.
That's right. No Bucks, no Buck Rogers.
Here are some examples of budgetary weirdness, either in the process or in the reporting of it. The A3 test stand at Stennis started construction in 2007 to test the J2X engine for NASA's Constellation program. Constellation was canceled and NASA no longer has plans to use the J2X, but the NASA Authorization Act of 2010 specified that NASA would continue to complete the construction and activation of the A3 test stand. The $350 million test stand was completed in 2014 and immediately mothballed. It now costs NASA $700,000 each year to maintain it. NASA's original SLS plans were to take the SLS Block 1 mobile launcher and modify it to support Block 2. But Congress instead decided to appropriate money for a second mobile launcher at an estimated cost of $450 million. SOFIA, an airborne telescope project, was eliminated from the 2022 budget request. But Congress decided to keep it alive by funding it at $85 million. Similarly, the Nuclear Thermal Propulsion Project was also eliminated in the 2022 budget request, but Congress decided to fund it at $110 million. Here's a recent story. Senate committee approves 2021 NASA authorization requires second HLS system. And another which says, legislation granting more than $10 billion to support NASA's Human Landing System program. Let's look at the actual text of the authorization bill. In addition to amounts otherwise appropriated for the Artemis program, for fiscal years 2021 through 2025, there is authorized to be appropriated $10 billion and change to NASA to carry out the Human Landing program. These give the distinct impression that NASA would be making a second award with a significant amount of money, but I'm sure you noticed the specific word used. Authorization. This bill is about authorization. The fact that it gives a dollar amount is simply a smokescreen. Authorization bills do not appropriate money. So what happened? Both the House and Senate allocated $100 or $150 million extra for HLS in committee, but the final number is the original $1.2 billion requested by NASA. Authorization does not equal appropriation. And finally, we come to the NASA Authorization Act of 2010, which contains authorization for two programs. First, it authorizes a new follow-on program to the Space Shuttle, known as the Space Launch System. And second, it authorizes NASA to expand the size of the Commercial Crew program that had just been started. But we all know what authorization means. How are these two programs appropriated? Here's a graph showing the SLS budget requests and appropriation amounts. In 2011 and 2012, the amount appropriated was a little bit less than the request. But since then, Congress has consistently appropriated more money for SLS than NASA has requested. Commercial Crew was quite different. In 2011 through 2015, Congress appropriated 60%, 45%, 65%, 85%, and 95% of what NASA had requested, and only reached parity in 2016. This lack of money slowed down progress on Commercial Crew significantly. Here's my quick summary. NASA budgets are aspirational. It is what NASA is hoping to get. Congress controls what programs exist and how much money they get. They can decide to fund programs that NASA isn't interested in, not fund programs that NASA wants to do, or underfund projects that they explicitly told NASA to do. Don't pay attention to stories about authorization bills. Pay attention to appropriations. That is how Congress indicates what is important to them and what the actual NASA budget will be. If you enjoyed this video, please compose a NASA budget haiku.